Hi everyone, my name is Christhin Montejo, and I chose to do my choice project on feedback and motivation. Okay, and I will be speaking on the first slide about the role of self-efficacy, determination, and mindset on performance, and how that impacts the performance of a student. As per the American Psychological Association, self-efficacy is defined as an individual's belief of his or her capacity to execute behaviors necessary to produce specific performance attainments. In other words, it's basically a person's idea of how they would, what they would do to get to a certain goal. For example, um, I would, if I were to try to do try to go apply to medical school, which is one of my goals, then I know that in order to get to that specific goal, I need to at least study maybe 5 hours a day or kind of have a schedule set where it's a daily studying schedule. Um, so it's kind of that self-efficacy is having kind of a belief in your capacity of being capable to do something to reach your ultimate goal, right? And then when we go into self-determination, I explore self-determination theory. So SDT links personality, human motivation, optimal functioning. SDT has two main kinds of motivations, which is intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is considered a drive to behave in a manner that has external sources and results in external rewards. While intrinsic motivation is a drive that motivates an individual in a matter of our core values, interest, and personal sense of morality. So they basically say that within the theory of self-determination, there are two basic kind of motivations, which is like an external motivation, which would be kind of an intrinsic motivation, or an internal motivation, which would be an intrinsic motivation, right? And an intrinsic is more of like has a lot to do with morality and interest, and it's more of like a personal. I feel like it's more of an emotional kind of reward. It's something much more emotional. External, it's more of something that you're going to get out of it. Something that it's externally. It's not something, not so much rewarding to your actual feelings, but more rewarding towards, I don't know, just getting like a good evaluation or something like that. That's a more extrinsic, motivation, I would say. If you get a good evaluation, you're going to do better. But it's an external motivation rather than it be like, I don't know, you get to spend more time with your family on a holiday or something like that. So it's much more, I guess, more um, emotional. And then for mindset, Dr. Dewick, professor of psychology of Stanford University, defines mindset as a belief that people have about the origins and the changeability of their talent, intelligence, and actions. Okay. How does this three characteristics impact an individual? Um, Albert Bandura mentions in his article multifaceted impact of self-efficacy, beliefs beliefs on academic functioning, that children's belief in their efficacy to regulate their own learning and academic attainment. Bandura also mentioned various psychological processes through which self-efficacy belief exerts their influence are intimately involved in development of cognitive competencies. Then that's how that, I guess, when talking about how self-efficacy kind of affects a person, Bandura does kind of mention how it impacts what others believe um, you would be capable of. So somewhat just like somewhat of what you believe, rather not solely what you believe, but also what others believe you are capable of reaching. And it has a big impact on motivation. Like if the external people around you per se belief that you're more likely, like if somebody tells you you're constantly intelligent, it's more likely for you to actually start believing that than somebody constantly says that you're incapable of reaching certain goals and that you're not there yet. That's kind of, that doesn't really help on your self-efficacy, as far as Bandura is explaining. And then for motivation, so we're acknowledging that there's two kinds of motivations, which were mentioned in the first slide, which is extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, right? But people are complicated, so it's less likely that one person is only doing it for the drive of getting, like, let's say, a extrinsic motivation, sort of like an evaluation. Something else has to kind of push that person to be motivated. It's not only one thing. Humans usually, it's so much more. It's so much more than just one kind of reason behind why you're trying to reach a particular goal, per se. And that's always, of course, keeping in mind the two, intrinsic and extrinsic, right? And again, the professor of Stanford University, the author of Mindset, explains the importance of the great role of mindset that has on the individual wants to achieve. Basically, it really does impact what you think of yourself. What you have set your mind to matters to where you're going to be in the end game. Like, if I say possibly I will reach being a doctor at some point in my life, it's not so much as I know I will be a doctor in 10 years and there is nothing that will stop me or anything like that. That kind of mentality is the mindset that you need to achieve that kind of goal. And that's basically what Professor Dickwick is saying from Stanford University. I completely messed up his name. All right, moving along. And then conditions in which feedback can impact motivation positively. Haiti and Timperley article mentioned that when feedback is provided, that it should be able to fill in the gaps between what is understood and what is aimed to be understood. Meaning that what I tell you as an instructor or as a professor or as a teacher, I should be able to tell you, yes, you did a great job. Even though you did a great job, the way you can kind of fix this would be if you tackle those aspects of the assignment I asked you to do and you didn't answer in your actual project, per se. So it's not like me saying, okay, you completely got this wrong, and there is no way that, obviously nobody's going to really say it like that, but in some words, like, not completely negate the fact that the person tried and be like, okay, this is way off, but more of like try to focus on the good aspects, but also bring the good aspects close enough to make that connection where it's like, okay, you did this, but you're kind of missing these other three parts of what I wanted you to do. And that's what basically had Haiti and Timperley is saying in the article, which says that your feedback should be explicit enough that it is giving the student the idea that yes, they did answer some of what you were trying to get across, but not everything, and they should be tackling this, right? And this is kind of what the next sentence that I posted on my PowerPoint is saying, that we need to be restructuring understanding, meaning yes, you understood this, but I still need this. It's kind of like confirming to a student that they have some correct, but there's some incorrect in there that they need to kind of tackle. And that's kind of the way you would tell a student, hey, this is what you're doing wrong, right? And then the way conditions would be impacted negatively, also in Hattie and Timberley. Mentioned that when feedback is provided, it can't be too correctional. Like your feedback is not to be all like correction marks all over it, because it does kind of affect a student's student's response to your next assignment. And I think this is something that's quite interesting, because I've seen it with my students and I've seen it with myself, that if you have that kind of instructor that gives you details, but to a point where the details are always somehow very negative and there's never really kind of like a positive reinforcement in it, it kind of draws you back as a student. It kind of is like, okay, so if I'm not getting anything that they're telling me, then what am I doing? It kind of pushes you back to like, I don't know if I want to go there. Or there's always that second, like you're second doubting yourself at that point. The article also speaks about so again, kind of mentioning the whole idea that it should be correctional. It should be correcting what a student missed, but it should also not give the feeling that the student that they didn't know what the hell they were doing. In other words, they didn't know what they were doing. It needs to be some of like kind of like a reinforcer in some way, kind of saying like, okay, well, yes, there was part of this where you were correct, but I may need more detail, or you're kind of lacking in this aspect, and not so much of like, okay, this wasn't what I was looking for at all. Because it does make a student feel threatened. It makes the student draw back and not want to be as involved in the class as you would want them to. And how does the format impact motivation learning? So meaning format as far as like verbal, and this is my draft, so my second one is going to be divided into like the verbal and if like videos matter. So it was interesting because I was looking at article which is anticipated verbal feedback induced altruistic behaviors, which really speaks about social esteem when it comes to feedback from I guess an instructor. And it was a study which was pairwise interaction, in which one subject, the divider, decides how to split a sum of money between herself and the recipient. Thereafter, the recipient can send an unrestricted anonymous message to the divider, right? And then the subject's relationship is anonymous and a one shot to rule out any reputation effect. So there's no, I guess, there's no okay. And then it then is compared to a control treatment without any feedback, and it shows that donations increase substantially when the recipients can communicate. So it was kind of interesting, I think, and this is kind of a face-to-face study, so I really liked it. I did have a little bit of a hard time kind of looking for other studies to kind of support this. I am also missing one more article that I'm looking for, and I really want to use that one article for this, since probably going to see how it matters if it's like on a video, if instruction, if like when you are given feedback, if it's in the video, how it impacts differently. Okay. Based on theory and research, what suggestions can you provide to faculty when providing feedback if the desire is to increase motivation in learning? Again, that's kind of what I was saying before. It's absolutely necessary, I think, to reinforce that positive feedback, because it can affect the student harshly in a way where they kind of withdraw on you. And I think as an instructor and as a student myself, that's never what the instructor wants. I know that the purpose is always to give feedback so that they know what they're doing, and so that not you, but the instructor actually gets what they're looking for. So definitely, again, constructive kind of feedback, always accompanied by positive feedback. And that is it. So thank you very much. Bye.